Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Pole Position Podcast. This is going to be episode 11 and we're going to be talking about the Mexico Grand Prix. The Mexico Grand Prix, how do I sum it up? During the race I was watching it going, this is looking like the last few laps of the race is going to be fantastic. We're going to see fighting between the top four. Charles Leclerc was coming into play. It was looking good. We had all four drivers in around an 8-second window, fighting with the last few laps to go, and in the end we didn't see any of that. And I know that some people were disappointed after the race as well, a bit like me. Some people were trying to defend it, saying, we had the strategic play and obviously Hamilton staying out and that was a good part of the race as well. But yeah, for me, a little bit disappointed. We're going to go into 6 points that I found and a couple of stats as well. But yeah, just to start off with the Mexico Grand Prix, my thoughts immediately. Yeah, I think it could have been a little bit better than it was. It's just a little bit disappointing. But we are going to go in, like I said, to 6 points that I found, and we're going to talk about in the Mexico Grand Prix. So, without further ado, let's get stuck into it. And this is point number one. And point number one is a fantastic weekend and a fantastic call, really, for Mercedes-Benz. And look, I talked about, what did I say? If you haven't watched my preview, I give predictions to this weekend's Grand Prix, to pole position and to the winner of the race. And I said in that preview that I would probably be wrong, and I was wrong. What a surprise by that. I put for pole position that Max Verstappen would get it. Max Verstappen or Sebastian Vettel. Max Verstappen did get it, but we're going to go on to why he sort of ruined his weekend from that moment on. But Charles Leclerc was the one that started in pole position for the race. And Lewis Hamilton won the race yesterday. So I put Sebastian Vettel to win the race. He came second, but he didn't win it. So both of my predictions ultimately were wrong. But because I just didn't expect Mercedes to be there. We've seen in the past they've had issues. The car isn't as strong at this racetrack because of the high altitude, and they normally turn the engine down. But mistakes by a couple of the other teams, whether it be pit stops or just strategic calls, and Mercedes pulled a blinder with Hamilton's strategy. He pitted on lap 23 from the medium tyres that everybody else started on in the top 5 as well, and pitted to hard tyres, and that was an early call. And even Hamilton was on the radio saying, I think this is too early, why have we come in so early? With Vettel and Bottas, I think were at least another 10-15 laps before they pitted. So he was worried that his tyres would go off and he'd struggle at the end, and would he have to go for a second stop as well? But when Vettel and Bottas came back out and they caught Lewis up, they just couldn't keep up with him. They couldn't overtake him. Vettel was always 2 to 3 seconds behind. And whether that's to do with these rule changes that are going to hopefully be changed for next season or 2021, because cars just seem to struggle, especially at this track in Mexico. Yes, you can overtake via DRS, but you have to get to that 1 second or under 1 second to activate it. And you can stay there, but if you don't get the overtake done in the first 2 to 3 laps, then you lose cooling. Your brakes get super hot, and you have to be told to back off and cool them down again. So yeah, I think that is a real issue, and it's been a lot talked about, especially after this race in Mexico yesterday, whether that needs to be changed, and all the cars really should be able to stay behind each other. Because if you can only try for an overtake in 2 or 3 laps and then have to back off and then wait another few laps to then go again, you're just missing out on some great action that could be happening if cars were able to stay behind each other. But in saying that, that's obviously for another day to be talked about in terms of the rule changes. But for Lewis Hamilton and their great strategy call, it worked superbly. I mean, finishing the race in first position, something that Lewis Hamilton, like I said, didn't think he would do when he pitted on lap 23 and having to do the rest of the race on them hard tyres. But yeah, I mean, credit to him and his team for getting that done. His normal race engineer Pete Bonington wasn't at the weekend, and I don't think he's at the USA Grand Prix either. He's staying at home. I think he's for an operation, but I'm not sure specifically. So let's hope everything goes well in that, and he'll be back for Brazil and Abu Dhabi. But his team that were there for the first race, for them to get his first win while they're helping out as his race engineers was a fantastic job. So yeah, good job for Mercedes on that. I also want to make a point to Valtteri Bottas as well, because everybody must have saw the impact he had in Q3 on Saturday in qualifying. In the last few seconds of the qualifying stint, he smashed into the barrier and then hit the Tech Pro barrier as well, and it looked a serious impact. So you could hear on the radio, with his heavy breathing, that it was a serious shunt. So he obviously he was okay, and it was good for him actually to get a podium. I think that obviously would have helped, because they must feel a bit like I don't want to say nervous as a Formula 1 driver. I don't think you get that, but after having a big impact like that, to then go back the next day and sort of go back out there, I think he did a tremendous job, and obviously prolongs Hamilton from getting the Drivers' Championship. He makes Hamilton wait till Austin. I think he's only got to finish 8th place. Obviously, you can finish higher, but as low as 8th place to win the championship in Austin does Lewis Hamilton. So I think he's going to win it. It's a bit of a shame that it's not going to keep going a little bit longer, but he's 74 points behind is Valtteri Bottas, so I just don't think he's going to make that up now, unless Lewis Hamilton has a couple of retirements, which you don't see happening. But yeah, I think for Valtteri Bottas as well, it was a good performance, especially after the weekend he had on Saturday. And so again, like I said, point number one, huge strategy which paid off for Mercedes. So yeah, well done for them, and a great result for the team. Number two is Ferrari. Now, like I said, great strategy call by Mercedes, and not so much again by Ferrari. I mean, I've been doing these podcasts, I think, since the Singapore Grand Prix, and every one I'm sure I've put Ferrari strategy calls in there at some point, and here, we're here again. I mean, front row lockout for Ferrari once again. I know we're going to talk about Max Verstappen and his reasons as for why he wasn't on pole come Sunday, but yeah, front row lockout for Ferrari come Sunday for the race. But yeah, they just failed to deliver once again. Matteo Binotto, the team principal, admitted they should have made more risks in terms of their strategy and gone a bit more than they did. And yeah, it shows for me. I mean, Vettel obviously had the fresher tyres going to the end of the race, but he just couldn't get close enough to Hamilton to make a move. And yeah, it was just a little bit disappointing to see. I mean, the race start, personally, I enjoyed a lot. It was feisty between Vettel and Hamilton. Vettel pushed him as wide as he possibly dare. Hamilton was on the grass a little bit at one point, and then obviously Vettel stayed ahead. Leclerc was still in first place at this point. Verstappen and Hamilton had a bit of a coming together. I don't think they really touched. I mean, Hamilton after the race blamed sort of Verstappen and said, you have to give him more room than anybody else, because that Verstappen's going to do moves like that. But you can't really blame Verstappen for that. They were both fighting, and if you look on the onboard of Verstappen, he was ready to turn into the corner at turn 2, but had to go onto the grass because Hamilton couldn't turn in himself. So yeah, I think that was a bit strange from Hamilton to say something like that. But Vettel, like I said, just couldn't get there in the end, and himself and Valtteri Bottas struggled to keep up with Lewis Hamilton on them very old hard tyres. But yeah, again, that just shows what needs to be changed really in rule changes in the future for the sport. His teammate Charles Leclerc, he was, like I said, pole position, was leading the race in the first few stages, but they decided Ferrari to do a two-stop strategy, and obviously that looked like coming into the weekend would be the best strategy to go on, but it didn't really pay off, and ultimately his race was ruined by his second stop which I'm sure he was stationary for about 6 seconds, 6.2, 6.8, something like that. Issues with the wheel gun and not attaching. Again, a few more issues with that this year. I don't know whether it was the high altitude or maybe the weather or something was playing an impact there. Few teams had real issues, and definitely one would be McLaren, which is something we're going to talk about in a bit as well. But yeah, he did get fastest lap, did Charles Leclerc, so that is a positive. He does get that extra point. But yeah, I mean, even when he was catching the guys back up again, I think he had one chance locked up in the sector 2 of the racetrack somewhere. And yeah, after that, just couldn't keep up with them once again, like Bottas and Vettel couldn't do to Hamilton. So yeah, again, bit of a strange thing for Ferrari. I'm hoping come USA they deliver once again, but yeah, it just seems to be one of them things, doesn't it, with Ferrari, that they seem to be making more errors than Mercedes in terms of strategy. I think they were unlucky yesterday because they believed that Hamilton wouldn't go as long as he did. But yeah, I just think Ferrari once again lose out to Mercedes in the strategy calls. And yeah, point number 2 is that something they need to consider in the future, is how can they better Mercedes in terms of strategy? I mean, only they know. Point number 3 is another missed opportunity, but this one is for Max Verstappen. Now, going into the weekend, like I said, I thought he was going to be the one to watch. Pole position, I thought Verstappen would have it. I did say Vettel would win the race, but that's only because I know stuff like this with Max Verstappen happens. And obviously, he had the issue in turn 1 with Lewis Hamilton and having that coming together. He then touched with Valtteri Bottas, and that saw him. I thought that was a bit of a bold move going in on the chicane in the stadium section on Valtteri Bottas, and as Bottas turned back in, he clipped Verstappen's, I think it was rear right tyre, and coming round the next lap, Verstappen got the puncture, and that saw him go right to the back of the grid. I mean, he did recover to 6th place, but ultimately should have been more, and he should have been starting from pole. And the only reason he didn't is because he ignored the yellow flag in the final corner where Bottas had his accident in Q3, the last few seconds. And instead of lifting off like everybody else did, you could see on the onboard cam Sebastian Vettel lifting his arms up because he'd realised he was on such a good lap and he had to back off in the final corners of the lap. But Verstappen didn't. He just went straight round the corner at the normal speed and crossed the line and improved on his time and improved on that final sector as well. And obviously that was where the issues lie. I mean, as a driver, he was already first, so everybody else wouldn't have been able to improve. So all he had to do was just slow down and not improve on his first time. That would have been it. He would have been on pole position. They couldn't say anything about it because he was already first after the first run in Q3. But yeah, Max Verstappen just has to keep on it. Has to keep his foot down. He says he doesn't see the yellow flag being waved by a marshal, but ultimately, if there's a car stuck in the barrier as you're going around the corner, it's obviously going to be a yellow flag. So you have to slow down. So yeah, why he didn't is utter disbelief for me. I can't understand it, but yeah, sometimes that is Max Verstappen. He always seems to have these issues. Probably that's why Hamilton's always saying we have to give him more room. Like I said, I think that's a bit harsh, but when he does things like that, it's just, I don't know, it's just strange. Why? I don't understand why you would do that. You would have been on pole had you not gone a bit faster. So yeah, for me, it's a huge missed opportunity. Like I said, it could have been his. He's won 2 years in a row at Mexico. It could have been his third in a row for Max Verstappen, and to see it go out like that and sort of unfold throughout each day. Like Saturday, has pole position, loses it, starts from 4th, has it coming together on the first 2 laps, goes back down with a puncture to the back of the race and has to work his way up all the way from 20th position. I mean, the fact that he got 6th was great enough. I know he got driver of the day, but that was because he ultimately had to fight his way back up through the field. But yeah, point number 3, a huge missed opportunity for Max Verstappen, and yeah, he could have easily won that race, easily. Point number 4 is The homeboy, Sergio Perez. Now, normally in these pole position podcasts, I don't talk about Sergio Perez, but for this weekend, I don't know if it was because it was at his home Grand Prix. The crowd were absolutely awesome. You could hear him every time they went round the track, wherever he was, people were cheering for him, and I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. And he gave him something to cheer about as well. I mean, last year he retired during the race, which was a huge shame, and I think the crowd really sort of, I don't want to say it lost its sort of mojo when he retired last year, but it wasn't the same as if Perez was still on the racetrack. But this year, great atmosphere, and Perez managed to finish in 7th place, which obviously made the crowd even more lively and even more enthusiastic. At the end of the race, he started 11th, and obviously I think that was one of the best places to start, really, because you're not in the top 10, you don't have to use the same tyre you did in Q2, had completely a free option of what he wanted to use, and he managed to fight his way up the field and did an absolutely fantastic job, an incredible job. I mean, like I said, I don't know whether it was because it was the Mexico Grand Prix and he wanted to sort of give something to the fans, but I think he did that. He did some great defending with Daniel Ricciardo in the last few stages of the race. I'm going to go on to Ricciardo in the next point, but they were both fighting for that 7th place, and Sergio Perez ultimately made it his and crossed the line first in front of Ricciardo. Like I said, absolutely incredible job from the Racing Point driver. He should be ultimately pleased with that. Great result, and obviously for the crowd, they were dancing with the DJ after the race. And I think if Sergio Perez hadn't done as well in the race, maybe they wouldn't have been so happy about it. But it was incredible to see that the Mexican driver get 7th place in the race. And huge congratulations to him for that result at your home Grand Prix. And so point number 5 is the person Sergio Perez was battling in the race, and that was Daniel Ricciardo. He ends a week of misery for Renault. Like I said in my preview race predictions and everything for the Mexico Grand Prix, I also talked about Renault's disqualification from the Japanese Grand Prix, and obviously all that issues that came into the weekend, talking about their brake bias system and how it was all automatic and the drivers didn't need to change it through the race. That was all talked about. It was all looking really depressing for the Renault team, but Ricciardo managed to pull off a fantastic result, another great performance, and he was the only driver at the start of the race on the grid to start on the hard tyre. And I think this is one of the reasons why Mercedes used the strategy of let's just leave Lewis Hamilton out, because Daniel Ricciardo went 50 laps from the beginning of the race all the way up to lap 50 before changing and coming in for a stop for his medium tyre. He went so far on that tyre, and he said it was still feeling good really, but it was just that he had to stop and he wanted fresher tyres and put the medium tyres on. So I think that was one of the reasons why Mercedes were looking at that going, well, Daniel Ricciardo's done 50 laps on these tyres, surely Lewis Hamilton can go from lap 23 to the end on the tyre, so let's just keep leaving him out. And so Daniel Ricciardo did a huge job taking 50 laps with them tyres, and great final pace on the mediums, which saw him catch up to Sergio Perez and try and overtake him in the last couple of laps. Very close at one point, I think, got DRS down the main straight, on the start-finish straight, all the way down to turn 1. Tried his late braking manoeuvre, which he normally does so well, but locked up, I think it was the front right, and went too wide, went onto the little tarmac runoff, and Sergio Perez managed to stay ahead, and obviously I think that was as far as the tyres would take him in terms of catching him back up and trying to get that manoeuvre done. It just wasn't possible in the end. But like I said, great result for Sergio Perez at his home Grand Prix, but also great result for Daniel Ricciardo, starting I think it was 13th. Was it 13th on the grid to finish in 8th place? Good bit of points for Renault. Hulkenberg looked to be getting the final points. I think he was in 10th at one point, but the torpedo of Daniel Kvyat hit him on the final corner, and Hulkenberg must have been like, are you serious? I mean, there's literally one corner to go, and Kvyat, as hit the back of me, and his car sort of swiveled and smashed into the barrier, lost his front wing, and that looked like he finished in 11th place at the end of the race, and how annoying for Nico Hülkenberg. That, however, was ultimately changed. The stewards give Kvyat a penalty. I'm not sure what it was, actual penalty, but it was enough for Hülkenberg to take the point back and finish in 10th place. So good bit of points for Renault, and ultimately good bit of points for Renault considering what my point number 6 is, and the rival that they're going for in the Constructors' Championship. So, like I said, just to finish off, point number 5, great result for Renault, and ultimately a great result for Daniel Ricciardo once again. And point number 6, just rounding up from what was happening on point number 5, McLaren. McLaren had a bad day at the office, really. Ultimately, is what happened. They left Mexico with no points, and it's only the 5th time they've done that this season, which just shows how well they have been doing. But highlights what a poor weekend they had. I mean, it looked like it was starting on Friday. Saturday actually looked quite well. They finished into the top 10 and were looking pretty good, but even in the race, both drivers at the start were looking comfortable in the top 10, and it was looking good. They were fighting at the top again and started well, and it was looking good. But for both drivers, it sort of fell away. Carlos Sainz lost pace on his second stint on his tyres. He just wasn't happy on them, and it was showing because he was just dropping down the field constantly, and even when he pitted again, it wasn't enough to bring him back up into the order. Lando Norris, what do I say about Lando Norris's issues? I love Lando Norris, and it was literally nothing to do with him. Came in for his stop, and there was a wheel nut issue on the car. I think it was front left. I'm not sure. I think it was front left. And the green light came on for the wheel gun guy to say everything looked clear. But I think Tag Kravitz was saying on Sky Sports F1, everyone could see that it wasn't on properly. But the gun was saying green, and he knew, the mechanic knew that he could only do it once he'd removed and reattached the wheel nut, but he only knew if it was on properly, but he had to take it off to find out. But once he took it off, the green light went on the screen, and Norris was gone. And Lando Norris stopped right at the end of the pit lane, didn't cross the white line because once he'd done that, he couldn't go back. So ultimately, they would have just had to retire the car from where it was. But he managed to stay just before the white line. The mechanics had to run all the way down the pit lane and sort of roll him back to the garage without obviously the wheel falling off, and reattach and put it back on with the wheel gun. And I think he was at least 1 lap behind, but close enough for them to be overtaken again. So by the front runners, he was then 2 laps behind. And ultimately, McLaren decided that it wasn't worth it, that they weren't going to get anywhere. There wasn't looking like to be a safety car, which would have allowed him to go back around the field. So they decided to retire. Lando Norris was the first retirement out of 2. Kimi Räikkönen was the other one. But Lando Norris, retired the car, and obviously they were saving for spare parts for the next couple of races. So, real shame. I mean, they've been pushed back now in terms of the constructors obviously not gaining points, and Renault gaining points this weekend. So like I said in point number 5, great weekend for Renault. Point 6, bad day at the office for McLaren. And so they are my 6 points of the Mexico Grand Prix. If you have any, let me know in the comment section below what you thought of the race. Let me know what you thought of the celebrations and everything. Just quickly, I think I'm not sure what to make of the podium at Mexico, where the car got lifted up and Hamilton's standing on there doing all this. I just thought it was really cringy. I know some people liked it, how the car came up, but I just thought, why do we need that? It's just a little bit unnecessary. I like the atmosphere and the DJs. I thought the dude in the white crash helmet with his strange selfie stick was just really weird to watch as well. Sebastian Vettel was just pushing him out of the way, like, why are you even here? Whether that's because I like how it is, I like how F1 is. I know they're trying to change it, and I like the sort of the F1 Fiesta style at Mexico. I liked the DJ set. I thought that was good for the fans after the race to have a bit of enjoyment and dance after the race, where they've been sitting up in the stands for 2 hours, to come down and have a bit of fun, where the drivers were racing around only 20 minutes ago. I thought that was good, but yeah, there was just some points I just thought they were a bit weird. But did you like the lifting of the car at the podium celebrations? Let me know why. I certainly didn't. Just a couple of stats from the weekend as well. 92,000 fans turned up for race day at Mexico, just again highlighting how much the fans were special. They were incredible. Mexico, the last couple of years as well have been good, but I think this year was probably the best. I think 342,000 over the race weekend. But yeah, 92,000 on race day. Another couple of stats. Lewis Hamilton win this weekend saw Mercedes claim their 100th win as a constructor. Again, just shown how well Mercedes have done over the last few years in this turbo hybrid era. And Lewis Hamilton also took his 100th podium with the team. And only Michael Schumacher at Ferrari has done the same. So good stats there for Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. Looking at the Drivers' Championships really quickly. Lewis Hamilton, like I said, 363. Valtteri Bottas, 289. Like I said, Lewis Hamilton only needs to finish 8th. For him to win the Drivers' Championship in Austin. Charles Leclerc in 3rd for Ferrari in 236. Sebastian Vettel only 6 points off him in 4th position, and Max Verstappen only 10 off Vettel. So that could be really interesting. Pierre Gasly in 6th, Carlos Sainz 7th, Alex Albon 8th. Another good result for Alex Albon. In 5th position, was fighting in the top 3 in the first couple of laps as well. So yeah, I think it's looking good for Alex Albon at the minute. Sergio Perez in 9th on 43, and Daniel Ricciardo finishes off the top 10 with 38 points. Just looking at the constructors, Mercedes on 652, Ferrari in 2nd on 466, Red Bull Honda with 341, and McLaren Renault. Now this is where the interesting bit is. McLaren Renault 111 points, Renault with 73 this weekend. So it's still possible for Renault to catch up, and obviously with McLaren not scoring any points this weekend, another reason why Renault would be quite happy with this result. Toro Rosso with 64 and Racing Point with 64 as well. So both of them level on points in 6th and 7th place. Alfa Romeo in 8th with 35. Haas with another lonely race. I mean, I haven't really talked about them, and just sort of shows that it was a poor weekend for them as well, with 28 in 9th, and Williams with 1 point once again. And there was one point where I think George Russell and Kubica were fighting with each other while Hamilton was trying to come through the field. I thought that was quite funny. But yeah, that was literally their race for Williams. It's just such a shame to see them where they are. But yeah, that ultimately rounds up this episode of the podcast. Let me know, like I said, on your thoughts of the Mexico Grand Prix and what you thought about the whole weekend. I thought it was good, but like I said at the start of this podcast, I just felt like it could have been better in the last few laps. All this was coming out. We had the top 4 drivers fighting amongst each other, but nothing just really came of it, and it was such a shame to sort of finish the race going, because I just wanted a bit more. But yeah, like I said, let me know what you think. If you like the video, please give it a like on the page. Subscribe as well if you're coming to the podcast for the first time. And yeah, thank you very much ultimately for watching this and listening. I will be doing a preview of the US Grand Prix, so that'll be coming up in a couple of days. And if there's any other news throughout the week heading into the Austin in the US Grand Prix, I'll let it know in that preview video as well. But ultimately, yeah, thank you very much for watching and listening, and I will see you all in that preview video in a couple of days. So take care, see you soon.